Okay, so if you're working in change management, I bet you've heard this, or maybe even asked it yourself. How's our agile implementation doing compared to, what everyone else is up to?
Oh, absolutely. It's such a natural thing to do, isn't it? You
Totally.
look over the fence, see what others are doing with similar methods, and you start wondering, are we keeping up? Are we missing something vital?
Yeah, exactly. And while we've been digging into this source that really pushes back on that whole idea, it argues pretty strongly that a lot of these initiatives, like Agile, they often lose their punch.
Ah,
Not because the method itself is bad, but because the change management, the way it's introduced and managed, just completely misses the point.
right. So this deep dive, what we're really trying to do is unpack that core argument. The source basically says, comparing yourselves based on whether you use Scrum or Kanban or whatever, it's kind of beside the point.
Mm.
What really matters for making change stick, especially now with everything feeling so uncertain, is focusing on something completely different.
So our mission here is to pull out those key insights. What is that real focus? How do you define and, more importantly, achieve change that actually means something that you can measure?
Okay, let's get into it. The source kicks off with this great little story
Yeah.
about a client, right? Been using Scrum for, get this, 18 years.
Wow, 18 years.
And they still felt they needed to ask how their agility stacked up against other companies.
And the response in the source really nails it, doesn't it? It says, sure, you can compare methods technically, but the only comparison that actually matters is linked to the results you're getting.
Exactly. Not just the ceremonies or the tools you use.
And here's where it gets, well, maybe a little uncomfortable for people really invested in specific frameworks. The source basically says you could be doing perfect Scrum, perfect Kanban, safe, less, you name it.
Textbook perfect.
Right. But if those original problems, the painful stuff that made you look at Agile in the first place,
Yeah.
if those haven't actually gotten better or, significantly less painful,
Yeah.
then what was the point?
That really hits home. You think about why companies even start down this path. Developers burning out working weekends, unhappy customers because of delays, teams feeling disconnected from the value they create, endless rework.
Yeah, all that stuff.
The useful question isn't, are our stand-ups 15 and a sharp? It's looking inside and asking, okay, where did we actually make progress on those specific issues?
So how do you even know if you've made progress? To do that kind of reflection properly, you need something solid to compare against, right?
Right.
And that brings us to what the source calls the absolute cornerstone of managing change effectively. You have to compare where you are now against the specific outcomes you want to achieve, the ones you defined before you even started.
Which then raises this massive question, one the source points out from watching organizations for like 2 decades.
What's that?
How often were those outcomes actually clear and measurable to begin with? They give examples like vague goals coming down from leadership. 75% of projects must be agile.
Which tells you nothing about value.
Nothing. Or just fuzzy ideas like improve quality or get products out faster without any way to actually measure if you did. It lacks the precision you need.
It really points to this bigger issue the source brings up. Too many organizations just haven't, well, done our homework well enough at the start.
Mhm.
Knowing the specific pain you want to fix and deciding how you'll actually measure if it's getting better, that's fundamental. The source is really clear on this, defining meaningful, measurable outcomes. Outcomes that aren't just yes, no, but show degrees of impact, what they call non-binary outcomes. That is the cornerstone.
Yeah, you really shouldn't kick off any change, big or small, unless you're absolutely clear on how things need to be different and exactly how you're going to measure that difference.
It seems so obvious when you say it like that.
But the source notes, as so many companies just jumped on techniques because, it felt right or they saw someone else doing it. They totally skipped anchoring it in their own defined, measurable goals.
And in today's world, things are so unpredictable. Sticking rigidly to some grand plan, almost impossible. So thinking critically about whether the changes you're making are actually helping, that's crucial.
Right. And the source mentions approaches like flight levels, for instance. They're useful precisely because they don't give you a fixed recipe.
Ah, okay.
Instead, they offer like ingredients and guidance for thinking critically, for looking honestly at where you are now, defining those clear outcomes, and using feedback loops to actually adapt what you're doing based on what's really happening.
So the goal isn't really for the company to be agile just for the sake of it?
Not at all. The real goal is delivering value, right?
Yeah.
Keeping clients happy, solving their problems with your products or services. The method, That's just the vehicle to get there.
And it has to be tailored to your specific situation.
Exactly. Your context, your unique way of working, that's where the real competitive edge comes from, constantly learning and evolving based on understanding your way of doing things.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down. What are the key practical steps the source recommends for actually improving how we manage change? It starts with that hard upfront work, right?
Yes. Articulating those meaningful, measurable outcomes, tying them directly to the problems you're trying to solve. That's step one.
Then planning, but doing it collaboratively with the people who are actually doing the work and, feeling the impact of the change.
Crucial. And then visibility.
Yeah.
Make the work needed to get to those outcomes visible to everyone involved. No hidden agendas, no secret projects.
Got it. And next?
Create focus. Help people actually concentrate on the most important work. Minimize the noise and distractions.
Okay, focus. And then feedback loops.
Yes, clear, frequent feedback loops, but not just to track progress against the initial plan. Critically, use them to adapt the plan. Maybe even adapt the outcomes themselves as you learn more.
And do that collaboratively too, right?
Absolutely, it's a cycle.
And finally, iterate. Keep going through these steps. It's not a one-off thing.
Not a checklist, no. It's a continuous process.
The source seems pretty confident that if organizations really put this kind of effort in, they'll find their way, even when things are uncertain.
Yeah, but the flip side is, if you're not doing this foundational work, not defining those clear, measurable outcomes, well, any improvement you see might just be down to luck.
Relying on chance rather than intentional design.
Pretty much. Hope is not a strategy, as they say.
Okay, so maybe here's the final thought to leave everyone with today, drawing from this deep dive. If defining clear, measurable outcomes truly is the cornerstone of effective change, how much are your current efforts really built on that solid rock versus maybe just hoping for the best?